Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, we're going to ask the question, are you attracting good people? Good day, everybody. My name is Kale Houser, and I will be your host for today's episode of the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I appreciate you joining me. All right. Do you know what the number one complaint of all business owners in America is right now? Can you take a guess? Even if you don't own a business, you probably know what it is. And the title of this podcast is a hint if you can't figure it out. I can't find any good people to work. Nobody wants to work. I can't find everyone I hire is garbage, right? Nobody wants to work. Everyone wants to just sit at home and be on unemployment. Well, there are certainly aspects of that are true. Our recent United States government has done nothing to dissuade people from staying at home and collecting unemployment. In fact, they've quite incentivized it. Did this last COVID thing. Am I allowed to say that? I probably shouldn't say that for fear of getting some sort of tag put on this podcast. But anyway, you get the point. We've been in a little bit of a worker, I don't know if crisis is the right word, but certainly some industries have been hit harder than others for finding quote unquote good people. And this is what I want to address in this podcast today with three things. I'm gonna go over three things towards the end of this, but as the lead up to that, there's some things we need to discuss. One, yes, recognizing finding good people and finding the right people for any organization, whether, whatever that industry is a challenge because similar to our last podcast, everyone has such different perspectives, such different desires. There are all kinds of different reasons why that is. And as the leader, as the business owner, this is one of your primary concerns. One of your primary jobs is how do you staff your organization? How do you find people to do the work that you need done in order to, stay in business, make profit, provide all those types of things. And if you are in that situation, and this is kind of twofold for this situation. One is you have a shortage, you have a vacancy, and you need to find somebody to fill it, okay? And I recently talked to actually a buddy of mine at church. We were just kind of chit-chatting, and this concept came up, and we were talking about hiring and interviewing and stuff. And he was a former, I don't know if he was the store manager. I don't think he was the store manager, but he was one of the higher managers of a Home Depot. Not in our community or anything, and I don't remember which community it was in, but he's like, Kale, every time I hired somebody out of pure need, like I just need a body, I'll take the next person that can pass a drug test and can fill out the application and is of age, like legal to work in the United States, I'll take them. He says, every time I have done that and have been put in that situation, it has never, ever worked out. He's essentially saying, I never found that, that elusive unicorn, that diamond in the rough that just turns into this magical, awesome worker that shows up on time and stays and does all the tasks they're supposed to do and goes above and beyond and blah, 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 right? We kind of get that. We have that, all have that mental picture of what the perfect employee looks like. But he was making that point for me of, when he's put in that position of having to hire based off of pure need, almost quote unquote, kind of like an emergency type of situation, it never works out. And there's kind of two folds for this let me get to the other side of this coin. So one is you have a vacancy. You have to fill a position because there's work that just has to be done. There's some sort of physical labor. There's some sort of data entry. Like something has to be moved from point A to point B, and you need a body to do it, a human body to do it. So you need that person to fill that vacancy. The other aspect of this that you run into along these lines of hiring good people, finding good people, is you're stuck with a bad one. You're stuck with that just kind of downer type of employee, the one that's just really brings your whole organization down. They're not fun to be around. They don't do good work, but they're doing something, right? They're producing a little bit, they're at least filing some of the reports. So, you're at this point of, well, do I take 20% is better than 0% productivity? And you feel absolutely stuck because you have this fear of the marketplace in your industry of finding somebody to replace them. And probably a little bit in the back of your head of there isn't anyone even out there that's better than this person and I'm stuck with them anyway. Even if I could find them, I'll probably just get worse, and now I'll be at 10% productivity. You know what I mean? Instead of, it's like the evil that right? Keeping your enemies closer versus trying to find that somebody that'll actually be on your team. And what this comes down to, and a large portion of it, and I'm not saying this is a catch-all solution or this is the one thing, but this is a large aspect that you need to consider if you haven't already, is what are you doing as the leader, as the boss, as the company to attract those good employees? Going back to the situation with my buddy as working at Home Depot, what is Home Depot doing to attract people, good people, again, this is all subjective, quote unquote, good employees to come work for them, And I guess this is looking more at the small business, because that's what we focus on at Kale Houser Leadership, is the small business arena. Is what are you as the business owner, presumably you're, 5, 10, 20, maybe 50, 100 employees. What are you doing to attract your ideal employee, your ideal teammate? And it's not that you're doing things to necessarily dissuade, but just like any other advertisement for a product, you have to get your name out there. You have to let people know that you exist and that these are the reasons that they should come be on your team, whatever that is for your industry. And maybe you don't have any right now, other than I can pay you a paycheck, right? I can give you dental insurance. I pay minimum wage, or I pay slightly above, or whatever that is. And I want to illustrate this concept, and I'm going to give a shout out to my wife, because she brought this story that I had forgotten about in a book that we had read back to the forefront of my brain, which kind of helped me think about this topic and how I wanted to present this. And there's a book called From This Day Forward. That's the short title. The long title is, I forget what it all is, about marriage, but it's written by Pastor Craig Groeschel, who's the senior and founding pastor of Life Church. Who, if you're not familiar with them, they're one of the first, if not the first, I should find that out, if not the first to do this concept of remote churches, where there's kind of one location and then they pipe the feed into multiple locations throughout America. And right now, I think there are like 44 locations throughout the states. Liz and I have been going to this church for quite a long time. We absolutely love it. I highly recommend. Total side note, if you're looking for a church, check it out. Life.church is the website, not lifechurch.com or anything. It's just life.church. Or they may even have a location near you. They're in like Texas and Arkansas and Missouri and Oklahoma, and I think they even have some in New Mexico and various places, Colorado, Denver. Anyway, sidetrack. Pastor Craig Groeschel is the main pastor for this massive church. Oh, the other thing I want to say, they're the ones who did the YouVersion Bible app. So if you've got that on your phone as the Bible application that you use or reference, or even came on your phone, they're the ones who developed that and continue to sponsor it as a free Bible app. All right, that's my plug for Life Church. So this book, From This Day Forward, by Pastor Craig Groeschel. It's about marriage. It's about, finding, like, how do you find your soulmate, and how do you find, create a happy and healthy marriage. And of course, it's from a biblical perspective and things. But there's a story that he relates in this that is so practical. And it is practical to Christians, to Buddhists, to atheists, to Satanists, like every human being this is practical to. And he talks about, in the book, the story of this woman. And she basically, grew up into the church, and then as a young lady, moved out from her parents' house, went to college. And I'm butchering the story a little bit. And honestly, I'm about 90% sure it's from this book. I didn't go back and specifically find it in the page numbers, but it is in one of Pastor Craig's book. But I'm almost confident that it is in this book, From This Day Forward, which was published in 2014. So anyway, he's recounting this gal, grew up in the church, becomes a young lady, moves out, presumably, goes to college, and then goes her own path, right? Goes away from the church and all the church teachings, and we kind of understand what those are, how to, live the good life according to the church and biblical principles. And she kind of goes the opposite end, right? So we're talking partying and kind of living for herself, like all those things we can kind of associate with just living a real poor choices in her life. And I think it was in the story, she comes back home and she meets this guy. Again, she's still, probably several years later, still a rather young lady. But but she's been living this life of sin for a long time, and she's gone away from the church. And she meets this young guy, and he's godly, and he's healthy, and he's fit, and he's kind and generous, and like all those things we associate with somebody being godly, right? They're really, they serve others and compassion, and right, so not very selfish, and they don't have a lot of indulgences, things of that nature. And she, instantly falls in love, because who wouldn't, right? It's kind of like the perfect guy. So she instantly falls in love with this guy, and she proceeds to go home and say, "Mom, I found this guy. Oh, he's perfect. I'm gonna marry this guy." He, goes on and lists all his qualities and things of why she's in love with this guy, and rightly so. We certainly are attracted to those types of qualities as human beings. But this is the critical part of this story, and the takeaway from this is, and how I'm wrapping it around to bring it back to this business concept of good people, is her mother kind of turns to her as, she gets finished telling her mother all about this guy she's going to marry. And she, probably out of compassion, but out of really brutal honesty of, hey, if this guy is really all that you're saying that he is, then he's not going to want to marry a girl like you. Do you get that? So you've got these two ends of the spectrum. One, the guy that's, Mr. Perfect, Mr. Wonderful, the kind of the ideal partner. Then the gal who has gone her own direction, super selfish, kind of made her own really, really, really bad choices. And the two are not compatible. One certainly desires the other, but the other, because of the life they've chosen for themselves and the way they've chosen to live, doesn't want anything to do with that side of thing. Certainly they will still show them compassion and everything, but it's not like they're looking for, that wild child to be their life partner in marriage or start a family with or anything. So you kind of get the point of that. And this is what I'm bringing back and wanting to bring to your attention is, are you the ideal future husband candidate in your business? Or are you the young lady that has spent the last several years wasting her life and living only for themselves and using and abusing people and using and abusing their body, right? In the business sense, which end of the spectrum are you? Because if you're the gal, you're not going to attract the perfect guys. And we relate this as if you're the business that, is notorious for using and abusing your employees in your community, especially if you're a small business in a small community, people know that. And they don't want to work for you. Surprise, surprise. Nobody wants to work for a jerk. I've talked about this before that high performers don't want to work for low performers. Excellent people don't work for jerks. It's as simple as that. And we're like that with all of our relationships. I don't, I consider myself a nice guy, and I don't want to hang around guys that I consider to be just kind of either mean or ugly, not physically ugly, but just ugly in character and personality. We're just incompatible of that nature. It doesn't mean I won't help them or talk to them or anything like that, but it's not like we're going to be buddies. We're not going to go into business together. So as we're relating this to you specifically, if you're listening to this as a leader and as a business owner or a manager, mid-level manager, or some capacity that you are in charge of staffing your business in your industry, what are you doing to attract that ideal? Are you providing that example of, hey, this is what it's like to work for us. This is the things of why we do the things we do and the type of culture that we've created in our business and our organization. And as you being a part of that team, you get to be a part of that instead of purely, dude, we're going to pay you $15 an hour. We'll give you a steady 40 hours a week, and, dental insurance is covered, and we got a pretty good, deductible copay on our medical, blah, 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 right? Which will only get you so far. And it's interesting, too, because I had a comment on one of my recent Facebook posts about a guy, because I was talking about, how to relate to people and my 10 magic words. And the guy he basically commented of, you can give them, good wages and benefits, and that'll really motivate people. And which on one hand is absolutely true. You have to have an appropriate compensation package. I'm not saying you don't, and that it's all just fluff and everyone's going to work for, rainbows and good feelings, right? There's a reason that we're in business and we have wages and money. But it goes beyond that. That gets people in the door, but it's not what people stay for whatsoever. And like I said, there are three things you need to ask yourself when you're looking at this in your scenario. One, what image are you putting out to your marketplace? And by marketplace, I'm talking about not just your customer base, who you market to for your products or service, but to your community of who you're going to pull potential partners and candidates from to work with you, work for you. So what image are you, both as the boss, as the face of your organization, and then as the organization itself? What are you putting out to that marketplace? Two, what are you doing to attract that talent that you desire? Or are you just hoping that they kind of walk in the door? Like, oh, I think it would be cool to work for Kale Houser Industries. I've never met the guy, but it's kind of a cool name. I like vegetables, so I'm going to go work for him. And I'm a high performer, so yeah, maybe he has the right compensation and culture for me. Like, it doesn't work that way. So what are you as the business owner doing to attract those people? It's just like any other promotion. You have to make yourself known to the marketplace, to people, so they even have you on their brain when they come to that scenario of like, hey, I'm ready to, looking for a new career or whatever that is. And then three, have you even done your research to look where the quote unquote good people are working right now? Your ideal teammate, your ideal employee, where are they at? And why are they working there? Presumably, for your competition or something. What is it about that job that they're staying there versus coming to work for you? And I'm not saying go poach them or anything like that, but that's certainly, information that you could probably find out fairly easily, especially if you're familiar with your industry and your marketplace, as you should be as a business owner. So those are the three things that you really need to consider and think about and process through as you look into how you attract good people, right? And just understand that there are good people out there. There are a lot of them. But right now they're working for other people. They're working for other good people. So the trick for you is, how do you become a good person yourself, a good company yourself, and even better than your competition to attract those 8s, 9s, and 10s, that come work for you. All right. Hope that wasn't too convoluted. I hope you got some good actionable steps, or at least some self-reflection that you can look at and analyze what you're doing in your marketplace. I would love to hear your strategies if you've come up with one that works better than another to get your name out, to promote your company to the workplace, to the candidacy field. Whether you're recruiting straight out of colleges or some other field or industry, I'd love to hear about that, and we can share that with our audience. All right, everybody, have a fantastic evening no matter where you're at in the world. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.